The closet door. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt unnatural, as if the city outside had gone on without me. I woke with a start, not from a dream but from the sensation of something just out of reach, an unease curling through my chest like smoke. My bedroom was dim, the streetlights casting soft amber streaks through the blinds, painting the walls with uneven stripes. I tried to focus on the familiar shapes: the bed, the dresser, the bookshelf leaning slightly to the left. Everything looked the same, yet the silence was too complete, the air too still. A soft hum, barely audible, filled the corners of the room. I tilted my head, listening. It could have been the fridge in the kitchen, or maybe the heater kicking on and off, but it sounded wrong. Somewhere between electrical static and the low rumble of a distant engine. My gaze drifted toward the closet. The door creaked open by itself, inch by inch. I froze, the sudden sound slicing through my racing thoughts. The hinge moved in a slow, deliberate rhythm, as if someone or something was teasing me, measuring my fear. The closet was small, the sliding wooden door not supposed to move on its own. I had checked it before going to bed, locking it shut against the drafty winter air that snuck in under the windows. Yet now it shifted, almost imperceptibly, toward the right. My hand went to the edge of the nightstand, clutching the cold metal of my lamp. I dared a step forward. The floorboards groaned under my weight, a sharp, solitary creak that echoed through the apartment like a gunshot. The shadows in the corner seemed to thicken as I moved closer, stretching along the walls and pooling in the corners like spilled ink. "Hello!" My voice sounded hollow, swallowed immediately by the oppressive quiet. No reply. Of course there wouldn't be a reply. I leaned forward, gripping the doorknob. The wood was icy against my palm, slick as if freshly polished. The air inside the closet smelled faintly of cedar and dust, normal enough, yet the hairs on the back of my neck rose. There was a subtle shift in the shadows, an almost imperceptible motion, like a fabric swaying in a breeze that didn't exist. I stepped back, my heel catching on the edge of the rug. A soft thump echoed. My heart slammed against my ribs, an uneven drumbeat, and I realized with a tightening in my chest that the room felt smaller than it had moments ago. Distances seemed off. The closet was farther than it should have been, yet the door seemed closer, pressing against my peripheral vision. I blinked, and it was as if the hallway had stretched, the walls leaning inward. I told myself it was sleep deprivation, that the adrenaline had scrambled my perception. But when I turned back, the closet door had moved further, almost daring me to open it. A soft creak, then silence. I sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the sheets. They were rough against my fingers, grounding me. I tried to focus on the tactile reality: the fabric, the cold metal of the lamp, the smooth floor beneath my bare feet. But something gnawed at the edges of my awareness, a subtle whisper of wrongness that I could not name. The hum returned, louder now, fluctuating. It sounded like it was coming from inside the closet itself. A thump, then another. The cadence was too deliberate to be the heater. I realized with a sinking sensation that the sounds were synchronized with my own breathing. My chest rose, the hum swelled. My exhale matched its pulse. I leaned forward again. Shadows stretched along the shelves. I could see my own reflection in the glass-fronted dresser across the room, but it was slightly off. My head tilted a fraction more than I had. My hand raised an instant after mine did. I jerked back. The closet door moved again, just a whisper of motion, and I could swear the shadow behind it mimicked my recoil. "Who's there?" I whispered. My voice was small, swallowed by the space between walls, but it was enough to make the closet still. For a moment, the apartment felt normal, solid, real. Then the door creaked again, responding to me, or perhaps anticipating me. I reached for my phone, fumbling in the dark, the cord of the charger curling like a serpent at my feet. The screen lit the room in a cold white glow, washing the shadows into sharp relief. Nothing in the closet was visible, just coats hanging, a few boxes stacked neatly, shoes lined along the bottom. Nothing that could explain the movement, nothing that should be able to see me. Yet I felt it, an awareness, a presence, a careful watch. I tilted the phone toward the closet, the light trembling in my hand, and caught it. A reflection in the mirrored side of the closet door. I wasn't alone. At least not entirely. There was a figure there, but only partially formed, blurred at the edges like smoke or static. It mimicked me, a slight lean of the head, a tiny shift in stance. My heart hammered. I backed into the room, the lamp falling from the nightstand and clattering against the floor. The sound echoed through the apartment, unnerving in its starkness. The figure didn't react. Not startled, not angry, not amused. It simply remained, copying me, patient, waiting. The closet door creaked further, a slow, deliberate slide that seemed to stretch time. I realized then that it wasn't just moving, it was breathing, slowly, imperceptibly, in rhythm with the figure inside. With me. I tried to shut the door, but it resisted, as if the air inside had weight, as if the presence didn't want me to close it. My palms slid across the wood, slick with sweat despite the cold. A whisper, a sound like my own voice, but not quite mine, slipped through the crack between door and frame. Don't! I fell back against the bed, staring. The apartment felt impossibly large now, the walls receding, the ceiling lifting. Shadows pooled around the corners, stretching toward me. My reflection in the dresser's glass moved independently, smiling when I did not. I couldn't call for help. The hum and whispering had filled the air, vibrating through my chest, swallowing sound. My ears rang with a distorted echo of my own heartbeat. Minutes passed, or hours, couldn't tell. The closet door continued to inch open, methodical, inevitable. And then, as I watched, the coats and boxes inside shifted, rearranging themselves in impossible ways, forming shapes that were almost human, almost familiar. My own jacket lifted from the hanger and fell to the floor, folded neatly, like it had been put there by unseen hands. I wanted to leave, to run, but the room had changed again. Distances were wrong. The doorway seemed farther than it should, the hallway narrower. Every step toward it felt like swimming through thick air. The last thing I saw before I turned back, resigned, was the closet's interior. Empty. No figure, no forms, no movement. Just the faint, lingering smell of cedar and dust. The door was now almost fully open, and yet the sense of being watched pressed against me, in the darkness between walls, in the reflections of glass and metal. I sat in silence, listening to my own ragged breathing. The apartment felt safe again, or at least familiar. The closet waited. Its door stood slightly ajar, innocuous. Yet I knew it wasn't empty, and I knew, with a sinking, gnawing certainty, that whatever had been inside could see me, could imitate me, and could wait indefinitely for the moment I dared reach toward it. I turned on every light. The hum vanished. The apartment exhaled into ordinary stillness. But the closet remained, its door slightly open. And in the polished reflection of the dresser, I caught a fleeting glimpse of something moving behind me. A figure impossibly still, yet watching, smiling a fraction too late, mimicking my hesitation. I don't know if I slept again that night. I don't know if the lights really stayed on. And I don't know if the closet door ever truly closed. But sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I hear it again. The soft, deliberate creak, inch by inch, as if measuring my quiet breaths, waiting for me to blink. And I don't. Her own number. Her phone rang from an unknown number. The apartment was silent, the kind of silence that pressed against her eardrums and made every tiny sound unbearable. She had been dozing on the couch, half buried in a fleece blanket, when the sudden shrill trill cut through the stillness. The clock on the wall glowed 2:17 a.m., its digits reflecting faintly on the darkened windows. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the device. The screen illuminated her face in cold, blue-white light. And then she saw it. The number calling her was her own. She froze, the phone buzzing insistently in her palm. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen seemed distant now, muted by the ringing. The heater clicked once, then whirred, but it sounded wrong, like the sound of machinery struggling against some unseen interference. Her fingers hovered over the ignore button, but curiosity clawed at her. She pressed answer. A burst of static greeted her, white noise so sharp it made her wince. Then, slowly, a voice filtered through, hers. Only it wasn't quite her own. The inflection was slightly wrong, a fraction off, familiar but distorted, stretched in subtle, unnatural ways. "Why are you here?" she whispered, the words trembling. Her voice echoed back, almost synchronized, but lagging by a heartbeat. She dropped the phone slightly, gripping it tighter as the sound warped. The static thickened, like fog, and the voice mimicked her inhalations. Every exhale she drew was mirrored, every subtle movement of her lips reflected in the electronic feedback. She stepped back, but her feet hit the edge of the rug. The apartment seemed colder now. The glow from the phone painted uneven patterns across the walls, casting shadows that twitched and flickered in ways her peripheral vision insisted shouldn't be possible. The screen blinked off, then on again, cycling through faces she recognized only partially. Her own in photographs, smiling, frowning, caught in private moments she hadn't even remembered taking. Each image lingered for too long, each reflection in the glass of the picture frames along the wall appearing just slightly delayed, as if time itself were stuttering. She felt her pulse hammer in her temples, each beat in sync with the faint buzzing now emitting from every electronic device in the apartment. The television in the corner, a laptop on the dining table, even the digital clock. They were all echoing her, all participating in some slow, deliberate mimicry. She backed toward the door, but the hallway seemed unnaturally long stretched. The light from the single bulb overhead flickered intermittently, bathing the walls in rapid sequences of shadow and pale illumination. Her reflection in the darkened screen of the TV moved independently, hesitating a fraction too long before mirroring her motions. The phone rang again, her own number flashing against the black screen. She didn't answer this time. Instead, she set it down on the coffee table. The device vibrated violently, jumping slightly, as though aware she had turned away. She stared at it, the glow spilling across the rug, the edges of the apartment seeming to bend toward the sound. A whisper rose from the phone, almost imperceptible at first, barely distinguishable from the static. "I'm here," it said. Her own voice, warped, fractured across the speakers. But it wasn't calling her name, it was calling her movements. Every subtle tilt of her head, every shallow breath she drew, was mirrored in the rhythmic modulation of the sound. She sank to the floor, hugging her knees, trying to convince herself it was a prank, a glitch, a dream. But then the screen lit again, showing her face, live, from somewhere she could not see. Her own eyes stared back at her from within the phone, blinking too slowly, lips moving without producing sound. The static thickened, growing louder, and she realized the sound was now coming from everywhere at once. The refrigerator, the heater, the phone, the faint hum of the city outside. They all coalesced into a single vibrating note that pressed against her skull. And through it, the voice whispered her name, elongated, slurring syllables, the digital artifacts producing subtle distortions that felt like hands brushing across her skin. She scrambled to her feet. The reflection in the window caught her attention. But it wasn't quite right. The figure behind the glass, herself, smiled at her in a slow, deliberate way she had never smiled before. It mimicked her exact posture but lingered, a fraction of a second too long, and then its lips moved again in sync with the whispering coming from the phone. The apartment felt smaller now, the walls closing in subtly, imperceptibly, until she had to tilt her head to keep her balance. The light of the phone cast strange angles across the furniture. Every shadow stretched in unnatural ways, and her reflection in the polished surfaces didn't quite line up with her real movements. She grabbed the phone, intending to throw it, but the screen lit preemptively in her hand. The camera activated, displaying the view from her own eyes, or perhaps from somewhere else. Her perspective twisted, showing angles of the room she hadn't noticed, spaces that should have been blocked by walls, corners stretching into darkness. And there, in the new perspective, she saw herself, or something like herself, sitting on the couch, mirroring the exact same panic, hands trembling, eyes wide. She screamed, the sound swallowed by the hum. The phone fell to the floor. The screen cracked in a fine web, but even through the fractures, she saw the movement. Herself standing, moving closer, moving toward the door, but it wasn't her. Couldn't be. The lips of the figure moved without sound, syncing perfectly with her own panicked thoughts. The phone rang one final time. Her own number again. She dared not answer, dared not touch it. The ringing stopped abruptly. Silence returned, but now it was different, heavy, expectant. Every reflection in the apartment seemed slightly delayed, every shadow slightly wrong, every surface subtly distorted. She backed into a corner, shivering in the cold, dim air. The window reflected the streetlights outside, but something behind her shifted in the glass, moving in a way that defied physics. She turned, but the room was empty. The phone lay cracked on the floor, dark, silent, but she could feel it. Watching, waiting, mimicking, patient. And then she heard it. Not through the speaker, not from the vibration, but in her own mind, faint, like a thought she hadn't had. "I've been you all along." The hum returned, low, resonant, surrounding her. And somewhere deep in the apartment, the screen lit once more, displaying her face, smiling, blinking slowly, perfectly. But not her. She wanted to run, wanted to leave, but she could feel it already anticipating her movements. The reflection tilted its head, mirrored her hesitation, and she realized it wasn't the phone calling her. She was calling it, and the line had always been open.